What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and I imagine a lot of you guys are cramming for your fantasy drafts this weekend, and you don't have time to go back and watch my sleepers videos from a few weeks ago or my must-draft breakout players video from last month. So we're going to give it to you on a silver platter all in one video. I'm going to go round by round and give you my favorite picks in each round, pretty much my guys. If you just simply wanted to know who am I drafting, who am I targeting in each round this season, this is the video for you. So as always, if you enjoy, make sure you get down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go. Like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen. She gonna let me. All right, now in order to go round by round, we are going to use consensus rankings. We've been messing around with this offseason where we go into the ESPN default rankings, which actually just got updated today, the sleeper default rankings, and the Yahoo default rankings. I am working to get you guys a tool very soon so that you guys can see this data as well, but that gives us consensus picks. So this is the consensus first round, 101 through 112 across pretty much the biggest platforms in the industry. And our first, my guy, my favorite pick in the first round is Breece Hall. Now I will say ground rules for this video. We're not going to go one single player per round. It's a max of up to 3. So you guys are going to get a lot of players in this video. We're going to keep it a little bit brief for what's usually on this channel. I'm trying to keep it to like 3 bullet points and 1 graphic per player, so we can kind of go rapid fire through my favorite targets for this season. And first up, of course, Breece Hall. This is somebody last year who, off of the ACL tear, ramped up his usage, and then from weeks 5 on was at 20-plus points per game, which is pretty crazy. Then we also have a bunch of cool stats from Warren Sharp here, just outlining how talented Breece Hall is and what he's produced in spite of over his last 2 seasons. He has had the number 30 and number 29 offensive line and run block win rate, the number 31 and number 31 offensive line and injury rate, and the worst collective quarterback room in the NFL over the last 2 years. He's torn his ACL and meniscus and rehab. He had a hamstring, ankle injury, and yet he's gained the second most total yards last year behind only Christian McCaffrey. The last 2 years, his per game net yardage ranks number 6 among running backs. He averaged the 4th highest rate of 15-plus yard gains and 5th highest rate of 20-plus yard gains. In each game, he averaged 2.75 gains of 10 or more yards, 3rd best in the NFL behind only CMC and Nick Chubb. He is an absolute monster. He's coming off an RB7 and an RB6 point per game finish. He also last year led all running backs in PFF receiving grade, targets, receptions, and receiving yards. So we have the PPR upside. You have just the natural ability of explosive plays. You also have a lot of upgrades coming to this offense, right? Where now we have Jets' offensive line is in the preseason top 10 on Establish the Run, where the offensive line is so good. And it's crazy to say this about the Jets, but it's so good that first-round pick Olu Fashanu is like the 6th man of the unit, where he's going to come in if like an injury happens, he can fill in at tackle, right tackle, left tackle. They've been messing around with him at right tackle in the preseason. Apparently, some people say he can kick in inside the guard. I'm not sure. I'm not an offensive line guy, but that's huge. That it's like Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses. They got Simpson from the Ravens. Joe Tippmann is this 6'6" Wisconsin second-year player who was a monster as a rookie last year. So you get that. You get Aaron Rodgers, so we should get more touchdown opportunities, more efficiency with the offensive line. And if this offense can just go from bottom 5 to league average, Breece Hall is in the mix to be the RB1 overall in fantasy football. And I'm fine taking him any pick inside of the top 5. If you want to take him first overall, I wouldn't take him first overall personally, but if you have just one draft this offseason and you really want to get your guy, I really don't think you can go wrong taking Breece Hall anywhere inside of the first round. Now, moving on to the second round here, we have 2 players. We have Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams. First up, we'll talk Puka Nacua. He's, for me, my 10th ranked player. I would take him inside of the first round, Puka Nacua, but he seems to keep on falling because of this knee injury. The knee injury seems to be just fine. Like, it's not a big deal. It was some swelling. He seems to be like he's going to be good to go in week 1, but he keeps getting moved down for this reason. But the issue is that when we talk about receivers, after Garrett Wilson, after A.J. Brown, it's Puka Nacua for me, and by a lot. Like, I have him over Marvin Harrison Jr. by a lot, Devontae Adams, Drake London, Mike Evans, all of these guys. So he's in this tier ahead where I would take him in the first round because you kind of play the tiers game where I have Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, Kyren Williams all in the same tier. That's 4 running backs versus Puka, who once Garrett Wilson and A.J. Brown are gone, is in a tier of his own. And we've had some nasty teams that we've been streaming every single night where I think last night we almost got Puka to fall to us, but we've started before Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, which is just absolutely insane in my eyes. But The reason I like Puka Nacua is because usually guys that look like what he looked like in his first year go on to be really good players. When you compare him to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in terms of PFF receiving grade, points per game, and yards per out run as rookies, he falls right in line with all of them, and those guys went on to finish in the top 5 in points per game the following season, with Jamar Chase hitting 20-plus points per game. I think that's in the upside case scenario for Puka Nacua. The Rams offense is ranked 12th in terms of Vegas projections. You could have a lot more shootouts without Aaron Donald as well, so I'm not as concerned about the knee. Anywhere in the second round, Puka Nacua is an absolute smash if he falls to you. And then you have Kyren Williams, who I've really come around on. He was the only running back not named Christian McCaffrey to hit 20-plus points per game last year, and that means something. And he didn't just do it off of sheer volume. He was an efficient back last year. He was 7th in rushing yards over expected per attempt. He hit 2.9 FPOE per game, which was a top 5 number. That is a crazy efficiency number. FPOE is just fantasy points over expected based on your carries, your red zone attempts, your targets, your expected points per game. How much did you exceed that? And he exceeded it by a lot. He also had over 100 rushing yards in all 4 of his games with under 80% of the snaps. So even if they scale back some of the volume because of Blake Corum, I'm still all over Kyren Williams in this offense, in this role. And then there's also some untapped upside where even though he had 21 points per game last year, I truly do think that there is some more meat left on the bone. This is the guy who came into the NFL as a receiving back, right? We're talking sub 195 pounds. We're talking 12.5% college target share, 89th percentile. That's from Player Profiler. You look here, last year, he was actually a bad receiver. We're in 2023. This is a tweet from me. 14.6 targets per run is actually decent, but yards per run, 0.64. That is terrible. 38.5 PFF receiving grade. Terrible. But again, he came into the NFL as a receiving back, and I think that he can improve on those numbers. We look at his final year at Notre Dame, 18.4% targets per out run, 1.47 yards per out run, which is really good for a running back, and then 80-plus PFF receiving grade. And last year, he was on pace, if he had played a full season, to be the first running back since Todd Gurley to have over 50 targets in a Sean McVay offense. So if he can improve in the receiving game, like we kind of have, like that was his role that we had projected for him as a rookie. Right? Like we thought in terms of him coming into the NFL, like day 3 guy, kind of like what Bucky Irving is seen as right now, is like this change of pace back, but really much more of a satellite receiving back type of guy. And that's just not what he was last year, but that's actually a positive, that he showed us that he could be a monster between the tackles. And if he adds the receiving game, which is what we thought that he had coming into the league, then we're talking about, 22, 23 plus points per game, which is what we're shooting for in these early rounds. Now, in the third round, these are pretty much the 2 guys that we planted our flag on this offseason. And first up, you have Nico Collins. He's going at the 302 by consensus, 31st over on Sleeper, pretty much third round across the board. And anywhere in the third round, I'm absolutely smashing Nico Collins. He joins this elite list, according to Jacob Gibbs, of wide receivers to run over 300 routes, so it's not a small sample trap, and have a 3-plus yards per out run, which is really, really difficult. It is him, Ayuk, Julio Jones, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill. Nico Collins is the youngest wide receiver on this list. He is a legit top-end talent at receiver. He is 25 years old. I am betting on him as a talent in a really good offense. He had 17.4 points per game last year. And if he just hit that as a third-round pick, he pays off. But I think that there is some unmatched upside where he actually had more points per game in the games with Tank Dell. He's the established X receiver where Diggs and Dell are more of your slot flankers. They're going to be fighting for their routes. And you have an offense here that, yes, is getting more crowded, but the overall pie should expand in terms of the passing volume, where last year they were 12th in pass attempts, 13th in completion, 7th in yards, and 14th in passing touchdowns. And that was with a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud. And not to mention, a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud had Nico Collins finish as a top 12 point per game receiver, and Tank Dell finished as a top 24 point per game wide receiver. And again, that's with a rookie C.J. Stroud. This year, they should go from 12th in attempts, 13th in completions, 14th in passing touchdowns. All of those should now be top 5 numbers with C.J. Stroud improving, and this offense giving him more of the reins to pass the ball more. So I'm all over Nico Collins. I think that he is just a high-end talent in a really good offense attached to C.J. Stroud, and it's just that simple. I'm not going to get caught up over target competition or depth charts. I just want good wide receivers attached to good quarterbacks and good offenses. It's simply that simple. Then our next player here is Devon Achane. And this is the closest running back that we've gotten to Alvin Kamara and these efficiency monsters like Kamara, like Jamal Charles, like Chris Johnson. And This is a stat that I pulled from the RotoViz database. He is one of 7 rookie running backs since 2009 to hit 3+ fantasy points over expected per game. Again, that's just your points per game over your expected volume. The 6 running backs before him went on to hit 20-plus points per game in their second year in the NFL. Achane has the highest FPOE per game season for a rookie running back ever and is going into his second season. Plan accordingly. So these are the only rookie running backs on this list to ever hit a 3+ FPOE per game. It is Jonathan Taylor, David Johnson, Kareem Hunt, Arian Foster, Zeke Elliott, Kamara, and Devon Achane. All of them went into their second season and hit 20-plus points per game. So you can say whatever you want about Devon Achane and him potentially being injury prone, him potentially being in a backfield split. I just think that you're missing the forest for the trees when you zoom in on that kind of stuff. When we have a player this talented, this explosive, this efficient, he's in a Mike McDaniel offense. They're going to score points. He does not need 25 touches to win. He really just needs like 16, 17 touches per game, and he will absolutely crush. And I do think that he can get there. Last year, we even saw him hit 20-plus PPR points twice with just like under 12 touches. He is a crazy, crazy player, and we have the data where people keep on saying, well, he's not going to get the volume. He's not going to get the volume. Well, we don't know that, right? He's going into his second year. This is the worst time in a running back's career to want to fade a running back. Generally speaking, this is from a Ryan Heath article on age curves. Generally speaking, RBs take a big step forward from year 1 to year 2 with peak production maintained from years 2 to 6. We'll get to when and how RBs decline in a bit, but we'll focus on the breakout years for now. And then he goes down on the bottom. On average, the league's best running backs experience a 42% increase in production from year 1 to year 2. Over the past decade, 9 of the top 10 biggest year-to-year workload increases, which resulted in at least 15 points, fantasy points per game over at least 8 games played, occurred in year 2 of the running back's career. So if he's going to get a big bump in volume, it's going to happen this season. If he's going to get a big bump in production, it's going to happen this season. And that's why I have to bet on Devon Achane. Again, the efficiency heading into year 2, it's just too good of a profile to pass up on. And if you don't think the carries are there, I would urge you to be open to the receiving upside. He had just 27 catches last year. This is somebody that's been lining up at receiver in the preseason. Odell Beckham just got hurt. He could be running more slot snaps. He could be running more stuff in 2 running back formations. And then he also had a higher targets per out run last year at 21.5% than running backs like Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson. So the receiving upside is very much there. I think that he can challenge for like 60-plus catches. I think he can be one of the most efficient backs in football. I think he can have the Raheem Mostert 20-plus touchdowns. And I just refuse to be out on somebody with game-breaking upside in the second round. It's already priced in. All the concerns about the touches, the injuries, it's already priced in. This is somebody I would be willing to take as high as like the 112, 201 if the market forced me to do so. Then in the 4th round, we have James Cook first in a group of a bunch of players here. But James Cook is pretty simple. Last year we saw Joe Brady. He came in after, I believe that they lost to the Broncos. Joe Brady comes in and jacks up the rushing, jacks up James Cook's volume, where he went from 11.97 points per game to 16.7 points per game on like a 1,700 yard from scrimmage pace. They wrote him as a bell cow. They're going to want to run the ball again this year with Joe Brady and the, removal of Stephon Diggs from this offense. And James Cook is a verifiably good player. This is somebody who has the best rushing yards over expected over the last 2 years in terms of per attempt. This is somebody who has the second most rushes of 10-plus yards last year. He was top 10 in yards per carry and top 10 in yards per catch last year. Just super efficient, super explosive, in a good offense. Now, maybe Josh Allen doesn't like to check the ball down a ton, but James Cook is more of a receiving weapon, where he actually has been top 5 the last 2 years in running back average depth of target. So he's not just getting your swing passes behind the line of scrimmage. He's actually going downfield and running real routes. So I honestly think that this 49 catch pace here could be more something like 80-plus catches. And then you're really cooking where he's almost like a cheaper version of Jahmyr Gibbs, where he's not going to get you like 25 touches per game, but he can be very efficient. He can catch passes. He can score some touchdowns in an offense that should score a ton of touchdowns, even with Josh Allen and Ray Davis there. So to me, I would take him anywhere in the 4th round if I felt pressured to want a running back. But if not, I do think that Jalen Waddle is a really good pick. And I think that this is a really good point by Adam Levitan here. Jalen Waddle goes at the 404, 44th on ESPN. I will say, too, with James Cook, 29th on ESPN is really steep, but that sleeper rank and Yahoo rank is really, affordable in my eyes. But then we have Jalen Waddle here, who's at the 312 on Sleeper, 312 on Yahoo, 4th round on ESPN. He's a smash across the board. I would take him as high as like the late second, early third, like the 2-3 turn. And people get very caught up on the idea of wide receiver ones on depth charts. And I think Adam Levitan does a really good job of kind of dispelling that here, where if you look at just the target share, which is really all we care about for these wide receivers, just how much volume are they going to get. And you can see at the top end here, like a guy like Jalen Waddle had a 27% target share when on the field with Tyreek Hill. A 27% target share is a wide receiver one level target share, even though that's not the wide receiver one within his own offense. So if it's concentrated enough, it's really not a big deal. And I think that that's kind of the talking point with Jalen Waddle, is that this is somebody that is on an offense that projects for the 4th most points by Vegas. He also was top 10 in PFF receiving grade last year, first downs per out run, targets per out run, and yards per out run. He was very, very good on a per route basis. He just got removed from games early for like very weird minor injuries, which before then he actually had pretty good health in the NFL. If he's healthy for the entire season, he is somebody that could very easily be like a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 in fantasy, even behind Tyreek Hill, just because of the offense he's in, which then brings us to Kenneth Walker, who I'm pretty much throwing out what he did last year, just like with Jalen Waddle. He was banged up. He had like 5 different injuries listed if you go into his injury history from last year. And now he gets a new offensive coordinator, and I really just want pieces of this Ryan Grubb offense. He is saying about Kenneth Walker, I think he gets better every single day. I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he's a really, really talented, powerful back. That's a true 3-tool guy. He's electric out of the backfield as a pass catcher, and that's huge. If he can be used as a pass catcher in all 3 phases on a modern offense, that is very interesting. He is really boom or bust, but I do believe that he is a good running back. He leads all running backs since he was drafted in missed tackles forced, and last year he had the 8th best yards per out run, which does give us some signal that he can catch passes. And I will say, I'm not crazy about 4.11, but that's sleeper rank of like, or actually 4.11 is probably fine, but early 5th is my true target range for him, which is where you can get him on Sleeper and Yahoo. Now moving on to the 5th round, first up we have Trey McBride, who is going at the 412 on Yahoo, 46 on Sleeper, really, really cheap price over on ESPN. And to me, just give me 4-5 turn Trey McBride over 2-3 turn Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce. It's just simply where I'm at. Touchdowns aren't sticky year to year, and outside of touchdowns in terms of underdog tight end pick'em projections, McBride 79.5 receptions is not that far off of Laporta and Kelce. 800.5 receiving yards, really not all that far off. It's pretty far off of Kelce, but I think maybe they're even sleeping on McBride a little bit here. And if we take out touchdowns, his 9.4 points per game without touchdowns is really not all that far off of Travis Kelce. He's going to be in this offense with Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, but we just need him to be a top 2 target in his passing offense. And I think McBride gives you that, and he was also a monster last year once Zach Ertz went down. Then our next player in the 5th round is Tank Dell. I know we also have Nico Collins, but again, I just want good players and good offenses, and I think Tank Dell is also a really good player. He was the wide receiver 18 in points per game last year, and this is a really good tweet from Dynasty_IM, where when we look at the 10 rookie receivers to post 14 or more points per game and to post 80-plus PFF receiving grade, he has a company where 8 of them posted a wide receiver 1 season, 7 of them have posted multiple wide receiver 1 seasons, 6 of them have posted a top 5 season. This is a Tank Dell post. And then if you go down below, the only other receiver without a wide receiver 1 season, Brandon Ayuk. The only other receiver without multiple wide receiver 1 seasons, Puka Nacua. So it's a really, really prestigious list to be a part of. Tank Dell had a monstrous year 1. And again, we're just betting on a good player and a good offense. Just 23 passing touchdowns last year for CJ Stroud. His passing volume, passing production, all of that should go way up this year. And that is really exciting for this entire passing offense. Which then brings us to T. Higgins, who goes at the 508. And he's very similar to Jalen Waddle, where we're just sort of betting on the high-end wide receiver 2s in good offenses. This should be a top 5 offense according to Vegas. You have Joe Burrow at quarterback. And with this Jamar Chase holdout, it should give T. Higgins a little bit more of an established connection with Joe Burrow, at least early on in the season. And even without that, we've still seen T. Higgins hit a top 12 point per game season, even with Jamar Chase healthy when Jamar Chase was a rookie. So he can still give you high-end wide receiver 2 upside. He's also somebody that has a pretty similar case to be made as Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, and he goes 1 to 2 rounds past those guys at a huge value. So T. Higgins, to me, anywhere in the 5th round is a great pick. Then we have the 6th round of your home league, and the first player we're going to talk about here is Rashee Rice. He is, to me, somebody who looks a lot like rookie year Amon-Ra St. Brown, is like a low ADOT slot player, but had really good efficiency, had really good targets per out run. Slow start to their rookie season, and then they fully come onto the field, 18.5 points per game from weeks 12 on, and then he is somebody that is slept on in the following season because people love to say, oh, well, Rashee Rice was the only guy that they depended on in Kansas City. He was just he was just kind of a creature of his situation or whatever it was, or a benefiter of his situation. Targets, production, all of that are earned in the NFL. We saw last year, Mike Williams goes down, Keenan Allen goes down, and Quentin Johnston still sucked. Jalen Reagor as a rookie with the Eagles was the only guy in that offense. He still sucked. At a certain point, you have to be a good player, and Rashee Rice, his usage stuck throughout the playoffs, through the Super Bowl, where he was still a key piece of that playoff run. So I have to believe that it is going to carry over to this year. Really, the only concern is suspension at this point, which seems very unlikely. And then we have Kyle Pitts, who is going at the 6'10". And I will say with Rashee Rice, man, he is still going in the 60s on these like default ranking sites. If you guys watch our high stakes drafts we do on stream, he's going at like the 3-4 turn religiously. So if you can get him at like the 5th round in these drafts, it's an absolute steal. Even though his ADP is in the 6th round, or his default rankings across the board is 6th round, I would take him in the 5th just to sort of get ahead of that. But then we also have Kyle Pitts, who, if we look at catchable target rate here over the last 2 years, we have to literally zoom all the way in down to the bottom here. I can't even get him on the screen, but you have Kyle Pitts at the bottom, 72nd among 73 qualified receivers for the lowest catchable target percentage. That just outlines how bad his quarterback play has been since Matt Ryan retired. Kyle Pitts, I'm still betting on the talent. This is somebody who is one of only 2 tight ends ever, him and George Kittle, to have 20% target shares through his first 3 seasons. That's a stat from Dynasty_IM. And now he goes from the Falcons offense that had the 7th most points scored, or the 7th worst points scored last year, the 8th lowest pass attempts last year, to now having the 13th most points by Vegas and the 12th most pass attempts by Mike Clay, and a quarterback upgrade from Desmond Ridder to Kirk Cousins / Michael Penix. All of that should do him absolute wonders. And again, you can get him in the 6th round, pick 75 on ESPN, 76 on Yahoo. I'm very fine with that. Which then brings us to the 7th round of your drafts. And first, up at the 702 by consensus is Najee Harris. He goes to an Arthur Smith offense, which people are very scared of. But to be fair, in terms of just scheming up good rushing offenses, Arthur Smith has been good, especially when he's not the head coach and he's just the OC. With the Titans, he had back-to-back top 5 offensive efficiency season, which is why he got a head coaching gig in the first place. Now, when we look at his 5 years of total data, 4 of those 5 years, he has ranked top 10 in rush attempts and rushing yards. He gives a lot of volume to his running backs. Najee Harris fits more of the profile of the running back that he likes, of this like big volume workhorse. And he also is a much better fit in Arthur Smith's zone concept running scheme. When we look at zone versus man concepts in terms of rushing efficiency for Najee Harris versus Jaylen Warren, Najee is much better in zone, whereas Arthur Smith's Falcons ranked 31st in man concept running back run rate last year. We should see a lot more of a zone scheme, and Najee Harris is also coming off of career highs in missed tackles forced per touch, yards after contact per rush, and explosive run rate. This could be a match made in heaven. As disgusting as it sounds with Najee Harris, I think he's the perfect post-hype sleeper candidate after last year kind of being a pretty big bust. Then we have Rome Odunze, who's kind of all over the board, right? Sleeper has him way up there. I've noticed Sleeper has the rookies higher because they house so many dynasty leagues, but pick 86 on ESPN is absurd. 85th over on Yahoo, 707 by consensus. And I just want to bet on talented rookies in good offenses. And this is somebody who Matt Harmon compared to Devontae Adams and then put in the same prospect tier as Jamar Chase and Marvin Harrison Jr. with an all-green reception perception chart. He is a very clean route runner, and when you're a very good route runner, it's not like he's raw, right? He's somebody that he can translate his skills to the NFL instantly, and people love to say, oh, he's going to be JSN in the Shane Waldron's offense. Well, JSN is a low ADOT slot. Rome Odunze is not that. He is a perimeter, like, X-type receiver that wins downfield. If anybody gets shoehorned into that role, it will be Keenan Allen, and the whole reason that we like these rookie receivers is the idea of backloading your production. Last year, over the final 5 to 10 weeks, you had Rashee Rice, Puka Nacua, Zay Flowers, and Jaden Reed, all as top 24 wide receivers. I believe Rome Odunze can give you that down the stretch at the absolute worst pretty much it's going to be at a certain point in the year, Keenan Allen will start in 2 wide receiver sets, but this is somebody who has missed 11 games in his last 2 seasons, is now like 32 years old, and any hint of decline or him pulling a hamstring or something, Rome Odunze could get thrusted into that wide receiver 2 role in an offense that's projected to have the 16th most points scored by Vegas. So I'm very big into Rome Odunze. To me, anywhere in the 7th round, absolute smash. And then we have Javonte Williams, who is going to be a very big benefactor of this Sean Payton offense. This is a stat from Sean Siegel over on RotoViz. In 17 years, Payton has never had an offense finish outside the top 5 in receiving expected points to the backs. So that's just targets, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, ADOT to the running backs, all together in terms of your running back room. It's a pretty nuts stat. In 17 years, he has never ranked outside the top 5 in that stat, even with Russell Wilson last year, who had never had a season inside of the top 20 for receiving expected points per game to the running back position. So Sean Payton's usage of running backs even, exceeds the tendencies of his quarterback, which is pretty crazy. You bring in Bo Nix. Now, you might say, well, Javonte was in this offense last year. Well, sure, but he was coming off of a multi-ligament knee injury, not just a clean tear like Breece Hall, but he had like MCL and PCL damage, which is really brutal to come back from. He had under a 4 yards per carry. He had 3.6 yards per carry last year. His career average before that was 4.4. He should bounce back. Then you have Samaje Perine potentially getting cut here, shrinking the, split in the backfield down, and Javonte could be a guy who challenges for 70-plus targets and is the lead back in an offense that's going to utilize their running backs a ton. Then we have the 8th round here. And first up, we're going to talk about Xavier Worthy, who is getting pushed up on Sleeper, but he's still not high enough on ESPN or Yahoo. He has the fastest 40 time ever for a wide receiver, and I might say, well, so did John Ross. Well, Xavier Worthy as a freshman had 62 catches, 981 yards, and 12 touchdowns at Texas. John Ross didn't hit over 400 receiving yards until his senior year after tearing his ACL at Washington. 2 very different players with very different skill sets and like production profiles. Xavier Worthy actually has the production to go along with the crazy athleticism, and we're already seeing what his role could look like in the preseason, where this is a passage from Dwayne McFarland over at Fantasy Life. Worthy has a 25% target share with Mahomes in 2 preseason games. The rookie speedster is working the opposite areas of the field from Rashee Rice with a 20.8-yard ADOT, leading the team with a 68% air yard share. Worthy's 89% route participation might be slightly inflated with Hollywood Brown out of the lineup, but the rookie is making the most of his opportunities. We may get a Tank Dell type of rookie season out of Worthy, even in a crowded offense. And this is a guy attached to Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to bet against the rookie upside. He could be an absolute stud where he is like Tank Dell, and he finishes as a top 24 point per game wide receiver over the entire year, just like Tank Dell did. And then we have JSN, who's going at the 802. He's going pick 72 over on ESPN, but you can get him much cheaper over on Sleeper and Yahoo. And like we talked about with Kenneth Walker, I just want pieces in this new Ryan Grubb offense. And if we look past the weird role that Shane Waldron put JSN in, of this like super low ADOT, Wan'Dale Robinson, Rondale Moore, slot gadget type of role, which he never was in college, and we just look at his snaps out wide, he was actually really good. Jacob Gibbs had a tweet here, 147 non-slot routes right when he's not in that like gadget role. 2.43 yards per out run is big boy stuff. Like that is a really, really good number on a pretty sizable sample of 147 non-slot routes. I don't know why I'm struggling here, but you know what I'm saying. He made a big play in preseason. I don't really care about that a ton, but he did do that the other day. And I do just like the idea of a year 2 breakout for JSN. Tyler Lockett's declining. And if JSN can prove that he can play outside on the perimeter and not come off the field when it's not 11 personnel, then we could really be cooking with something in an offense that's going to pass the ball a lot, pass the ball deep, and kind of have the Jalen McMillan role that was on Washington. And Jalen McMillan had a really good role. He was just banged up a ton last year with Ryan Grubb. This is a guy in JSN who was an elite wide receiver prospect in a bad role last year. But when we go back to Ohio State, he went toe-to-toe, yard for yard, band for band with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson as a sophomore, which is a pretty big feather in his cap. Now, moving on to the 9th round, we have more rookies. And rookies are just kind of mispriced across the board when it comes to your home league drafts. And the first guy we'll talk about is Brian Thomas Jr., 905 by consensus, pick 96 on ESPN, just across the board too low. I have him in my rankings. I think I have him like maybe 72nd, 73rd in my rankings. I will say, if you want access to my rankings for your draft coming up, like I said, you might be cramming for your home league draft. I have my top 200 cheat sheet I bring in with me to all my home league drafts, all of my high stakes drafts. It is my top 200. It's tiered. It has my target players, my avoids. It has all of these players that I have as targets outlined and pushed up my draft board. So if you want to make sure you crush your home league draft and beat your friends, make sure you check out patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I'll have a link in the description and the comment section down below where you can get my set of rankings. But with Brian Thomas Jr., he's already out here in 2 wide receiver sets. He's out here opposite of Gabe Davis. He's making plays. He's in an offense that is projected for the 15th most points by Vegas, the 8th most pass attempts by Mike Clay, and then he's also this big play receiver where he had 68 catches for 1,177 yards last year and 17 touchdowns, next to Malik Neighbors, which is pretty crazy. And it's this perfect marriage with Trevor Lawrence, where Trevor Lawrence was one of 5 quarterbacks last year with 70 or more passes that were 20 or more yards downfield. Brian Thomas was the best graded wide receiver in college on passes 20 or more yards downfield and had the 2nd most yards in college football on such passes. So he operates downfield. He's kind of like a Will Fuller type of guy, but I think he's probably Will Fuller is honestly doing him dirty. He is kind of Will Fuller, but maybe mixed a little bit more with like Martavis Bryant or T. Higgins. And then we have John Brooks, who if you can get him in the 9th round, I love that. He's like a poor man's version of rookie Todd Gurley, where Todd Gurley tore his ACL on November 15th. You can see from Dave Kluge here. Then he came in, was inactive the first 2 weeks, then 7 touches, then 21, then 30, then was a league winner. Then you have Edwin Porras here, injury analyst, agreeing with him pretty much, which if an injury guy is agreeing with him, it's telling us that he's not all that concerned about post-injury efficiency. Then you have Dave Kluge here. Gurley averaged 19.9 PPR points during the fantasy playoffs in his rookie season, and that's what you're hoping for. He's not going to play early on. He's probably going to land on the pup, but by week 5, 6, 7, he'll ramp up, he'll get a full workload, and can kind of be a discounted version of what Breece Hall was last year as a young running back coming off of a torn Achilles. Now, after that, we have Brock Bowers here, who to me, I mean, he's going, dude, pick 79 on Sleeper. So this is really inflating it. He's really more of a 10th round pick. And I want to say on Yahoo, that would be an 11th round pick. And for me, Brock Bowers is, if you miss out on Laporta through George Kittle, I think Brock Bowers, price-wise, is probably your next best bet. Really, I mean, crazy tight end prospect. I think really, if you just put his receiving numbers, up against the wide receiver prospects from this draft, I think it goes, of course, Marv, Neighbors, Rome, and then you can make a very strong case for Bowers over any other rookie receiver in terms of just a receiving profile. This is somebody, as a true freshman on Georgia, had 56 catches, 882 yards, and 13 receiving touchdowns in a wide receiver room of George Pickens, A.D. Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, and Jermaine Burton. Just bonkers stuff. And then probably like James Cook at running back as well. And was just like the best player on an undefeated Georgia team. Like, he is just an absolute monster. And I do love the way that the Raiders have used him so far. This was the first preseason game as outlined by Adam Levitan here. Brock Bowers played 11 snaps, 5 of them in line, 3 of them in the backfield, 2 out wide, 1 in the slot. Michael Mayer got 12 snaps. So that'll be kind of the downside, is he's going to be splitting some time with Michael Mayer. But if they use him in creative ways and line him up at, running back, slot, fullback, and just kind of use him as this like jack of all trades, that's a really fun archetype that if he's just so good, he could just be somebody that earns all of those snaps at different positions. And even if he's splitting time with Michael Mayer, he might get enough snaps elsewhere, whether that's in the slot or out wide or at fullback. And we don't mind fullback because like he can be somebody where it's like a play action and then he runs off into the flat. I think that was actually a play that they ran with him. They could even give him a carry. This is somebody who had like a crazy rushing stat line in college. So he's just super explosive. He's a really, really good player. And if you can get him in like the 10th, 11th round and you whiffed on tight end, I think he's very much fine there. Then you have our 10th round target, and that is just Caleb Williams here. And Caleb Williams is in a great spot. He has Shane Waldron. He has arguably the best 3 wide receiver set in football with Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. Vegas projects this team to score the 16th most points in football, and this is an amazing prospect. And I think the people underestimate his rushing upside. This is somebody who had 10 or more rushing touchdowns in each of his final 2 seasons. He has genuine rushing upside that I think is getting really discounted, where he could get like 7, 8, 9, 10 rushing touchdowns on top of, like 3,500 plus passing yards, 25 plus passing touchdowns, and be a guy who is like in the past, like we've seen, RG3, we've seen Cam Newton just be this like monster rookie year quarterback and be a legit stud in terms of points per game. I really do think that's in the range of outcomes for Caleb Williams. You can get him pretty much for free, especially on ESPN, pick 132. And then we have a couple of sleepers in round 11 or later. We'll talk about Herbert first. He is one of the best quarterbacks across the entire league. I know social media hates Justin Herbert. I know a lot of you guys in the comments are going to hate Justin Herbert. He can't control his defense. His defense isn't going to be all that great this year anyways. They're going to have some, shootouts, especially in their division. Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks of his generation when it comes to win probability added on all plays. He had 38 passing touchdowns as a second-year player. He's never had a really good coaching staff in general. He gets Jim Harbaugh now. People think they're going to run the ball a ton. I mean, maybe, but you can't build an offense out of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. You also can't keep running the ball if your defense can't keep up, and their defense might not be able to keep up in a division with, the Chiefs. So if Justin Herbert has to play quarterback and be the engine of this offense, which he should, and to me, he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL at worst, you can get him at QB 16 prices. And if I whiff on one of the elite quarterbacks up top, I'm very much fine taking like Caleb Williams and Justin Herbert and calling that a day in my quarterback room. Then you also have, of course, Taysom Hill, who is, or actually, I don't know, Taysom Hill is the 4th guy on this list, but we'll bring him up anyways. This is Scott Barrett. In terms of his usage for preseason, he had 2 snaps out wide, 2 snaps as slot receiver, 8 snaps at tight end, 9 snaps in the backfield. He's basically Pat Freiermuth, but he's doubling as the team's goal line back for free. He's somebody where he has tight end eligibility on a lot of these sites. If you whiff on, Laporta through Brock Bowers, I think Taysom Hill is probably your next best bet. I would draft a second tight end with Taysom Hill, but he is very much a cheese, glitch in the matrix type of tight end. But if you can use him, then you probably should. Then we have Jalen Wright, who to me is just on a really good offense on Miami. And Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, both guys who have missed time with injuries before, both guys sub 200 pounds. Either of them miss time, Jalen Wright will get thrusted into that role and give you 10-plus touches per game and can potentially be very good as a running back that is the biggest back in this backfield and also runs 4.3 speed. He's also looked really good in the preseason. Then you have Rico Dowdle, who could be the lead running back in Dallas and is going at pick 196 on ESPN, which is just bonkers. And then, of course, Dontavion Wicks, who I do love late. He is somebody that is 13th in first downs per out run last year, and the entire list of the top 15 is just absurd. It's like Tyreek, Ayuk, Jefferson, Nico, Waddle, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Rashee Rice, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. There's not a single bad receiver on the list besides maybe Dontavion Wicks. And it's not that he's bad, he's just lesser known. So that is going to do it for us today. That was round by round, my guys, longer than expected, but appreciate you guys watching. Again, that was if I could just put all of my favorite players by round into one video and just package it to you on a silver platter. Here are the guys that I'm drafting this year. That was it. Of course, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe. Also, of course, check out the Patreon if you want the entire rankings, but if you can't, subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, ice around my body like I'm